So I took first place at a Friday Night Magic, and I thought that I would talk about the deck I took first place with, because I plan on doing this more after Ravnica cycles in and Scar cycles out. So this is the deck I won with. The deck I won with is basically Wolf Run Ramp, except my own version of it. Obviously here are the 2 Wolf Runs, and the 4 Rootbound Crags and Copperline Gorges. When I made this deck, it was prior to Dark Ascension coming out, so people were running a lot of Ghost Quarters, so the 2 Kessigs were necessary in case one got Ghost Quartered. And then we have the 4 Inkmoth Nexuses, which are actually very important to the deck. They start to become a primary kill condition depending on what kind of deck your opponent is playing. Inkmoth Nexuses can also be bad if your opponent drops the Curse of Death's Hold when they're at a 8 poison counters, because suddenly you no longer have a way to keep your Inkmoth alive. Also, I'm going to move the camera over. You have 10 basic land. I have 10 basic land and 9 ways to get a basic land, so it's really easy to get basic land out of my deck. These are the creatures that I run. I run 2 Birds of Paradise. I would run more, except with the prevalence of Gut Shot in my meta, it's kind of silly to run more birds when I can run Viridian Emissaries and they're less likely to get Gut Shot because they don't want to give me the land. I actually benefit from them Gut Shotting my Viridian Emissaries, where I don't from the Birds of Paradise. I also run 2 Skin Shifters because they give me the flying damage I need if there's a blocker, plus the 4/4 trample damage if I can get through on the ground. And they're also a 0/8 plant, which with the prevalence of trample from things like Raincore, I can have a decent sized blocker, so they're really well rounded to the particular meta I play at. They can kill Delver if I need to kill a Delver. And like I said earlier with the Emissaries, the ability to benefit from a Gut Shot or being killed is actually very important to me. So unless you do something to actually exile my Emissaries, it's beneficial for them not to kill my Emissaries too fast, because that helps accelerate my mana production. I also run 2 Solemns. I know a lot of people run more, but I don't particularly like the Solemn. I like the fact that when it comes into play you get land, and when it dies you can draw a card, but I don't like the 4 cost of it because it slows down my deck significantly, especially with the amount of large creatures I have, which I will now show you by moving the camera. Whoosh. Alright, so here we have a Wormcoil and 2 Inferno Titans. I definitely like the Wormcoil against decks that like to deal massive amounts of damage because of the lifelink and the death touch. 2 Inferno Titans, that's actually all the Inferno Titans we have, so that's one of the reasons why there's a Wormcoil in place of it. Inferno Titan is really good, except for the fact I can't fish it up with the Green Sun, just like Wormcoil. Wormcoil is really good if you're trying to get board presence, because even if they kill it, you still have tokens. Then there's the Inferno Titans. Like I said, they're actually really good with the excessive amount of pumping you can do and getting through with a Wolf Run if you need to. 4 Primeval Titans. Primeval Titans are key. They get you land. Land helps accelerate Wolf Run. My secret weapon, Balefire Dragon. Balefire Dragons are actually really good because, even though a lot of people don't think so, because they're a haymaker. They hit the field and you either have to deal with them or you die, basically. Occasionally someone gets through, but most of the time if it hits the field and it resolves and stays resolved, then you win. They also can deal with Titans because they can just go over the Titans, which is really good. And you can pump it and deal excessive amount and clear your opponent's entire board. And I hope you really can't hear my brother's music over me recording this, because that would be bad. So these are the artifacts I have in the deck. I have one Mimic Vat. Mimic Vat is really good because it makes them even less likely to want to kill your Titans. This becomes an even more serious threat than the Titans themselves or the Balefire. Obviously it can be naturalized and stuff, but when they have to choose between a Mimic Vat and a sword, it's a really tough choice for them most of the time. And the Sphere of the Suns. Sphere of the Suns is another XL card. They only work 3 times and then they're basically dead. I do have the instant Beast Within to Beast Within them if I need to, but mostly I just save these for my opponent's creatures. Or, like, if they have, like, a Phyrexian Crusader or something, because all of my other removal spells are red. There aren't too many Phyrexian Crusaders nowadays, but still, this is, like, a one-of that's actually very important to, for removal of certain things. The Body and Mind is more for the pro blue than anything else. The milling is fun and it's nice to get a wolf token, but getting around the blue stuff is the hardest thing. To War and Peace. I like the life gain and the extra damage because that can be key. And for the last section on the main board, we have the sorceries. I only run 3 Rampant Growths because, like I said, I have 9 ways to fish up the 10 basic land I have. So late game, the Rampant Growths are kind of a dead draw. Then I have 3 Green Suns. Obviously the only big creature I can fish up with him is a Primeval, but this allows me to excel a lot faster. I can get out a bird or an emissary, or if I need a defender, I can get out my Skin Shifter. And I have my 2 Slag Storms. Most of my creatures can survive a Slag Storm, and if they can't, it's a benefit. They can benefit me, like the Solemn and the Emissary. I can fish out a basic land or draw a card. To the only card, because I made this deck prior to Dark Ascension coming out, and then I kind of had to stop playing for a while. So I don't really have any M13, Avacyn Restored, or Dark Ascension cards. I do, however, have a Bonfire of the Damned, which is actually really key. If I draw this and put this into my hand, then I've just lost the miracle cost, and that can be really bad when that happens. It happened to me in one game. I didn't actually need it. I had enough mana to pay for what I needed with the regular cost, but I could have just miracled it had I been paying attention. For the fact that I have to remember to check to make sure I'm not drawing a Bonfire of the Damned. It's probably the best card. It's won me a couple of games. I probably wouldn't have taken first without this card. I wish I had more. I also wish they didn't cost $40. We got it from my brother taking first last week at the tournament with his elf deck. So, sideboard, I have 5 instant cards. I have 3 reverberates. I can reverberate my own stuff, but I can also reverberate other stuff as well. I haven't really needed to use these in the 2 weeks I've been back. Since I started playing green in Innistrad, I have had the fog. So I really like it. I noticed some other people are starting to play with fog, and I'm like, you're stealing my secret tech. Normally the fog is main board, but I moved it to the sideboard this week in favor of a second War and Peace in the main board because I could deal with most of the aggro that my meta is facing. And then I have 1 Naturalize. I'm really thinking of adding more because I noticed that there were a couple people playing Tezzeret, and with 1 straight up artifact enchantment removal, it was kind of annoying. But prior to that, there hadn't been much need for it because I could just get around all of the stuff. That, and I had to play my brother, and he had the Feast and Famines, which were really annoying for my... And then the next 5 cards in my sideboard are 2 Azuri's Archers. These are for Delver and Vampire Nighthawks in the event I can't deal with them some other way. It's a cheap way to deal with the flying creatures that are maybe a bit too big for my Skin Shifter and too fast for my Balefire. Koth's Courier, there have been a few people running greens or splashing green, so this is a great way to get through them. I ran more in my Balefire beatdown deck online, which is basically Wolf Run, but more centered around getting Balefires out. Not enough people play green to make this a main deck. Is Primordial Hydra. I keep this in the sideboard even though some people say it should be main board, because their decks tend to be a bit more aggressive than this is ready for. Like, this is great against control decks, because you can get it out early and then it just becomes a nightmare really fast. It becomes much more threatening than like a Mimic Vat or a Titan. So they tend to deal with this, and I get to deal with them with my Titans or my Balefire, or sometimes just my Skin Shifter. Bone Horde in the sideboard. A lot of people seem to be running mono black, liking to get rid of creatures and stuff, so this is a great way to deal with them, because there aren't really that many ways that I know of for black to get rid of artifacts. The bigger my creature is, the less I have to pump it with Wolf Run, which is... so then I really can just activate Wolf Run for like a trample as opposed to pumping it. And I really like Bone Horde. It's kind of expensive to play, so... and in the event I'm playing a deck that like Tezzy seems to be around still in my meta, so it's not really good against that because most of the things are just artifacts in the graveyard. They're not actually creatures. The last 5 cards in my sideboard are a Slagstorm. It's a third one. I didn't really feel the need for having 3 in a deck. But sometimes, in particularly heavy aggro decks or against like mono red, they're really good. Whenever I'm facing down like really big creatures or like a Titan match, I can Blasphemous Act the field away. I generally have enough mana for that based on either just the mana cost or the fact that I play less for each creature on the field. And so decks that get a lot of creatures out really fast, this is kind of like my day for that. Not mono red, protection from red creatures kind of get annoying with this because unlike Day, they stay on the field. But it's a one of, because I don't want to keep blowing up my creatures too often unless they have like a Mimic Vat and they don't really have artifact removal. Corrosive Gale, another way to deal with flying creatures. It's a third way in addition to a third sideboarded way, in addition to the 2 Azorius Archers, is to Corrosive Gale them away. The reason I have Azorius Archers instead of more Corrosive Gales is because I can also like get in a couple damage with the Azorius Archer if it's a slow deck, whereas this is literally just for removing. I could hit more creatures with this to be sure, but I didn't want to overload my deck overload my sideboard with cards that are really just solitary purpose cards. Fireball. I've played around with Fireball, Devil's Play, and Red Sun Zenith. I like them all. I basically just put Fireball in because it's the uncommon and the other 2 are rare, and I like the fact that with this one I can hit multiple creatures, so I can take out 2 or 3 creatures, or if I have enough mana, take out a couple creatures and deal some damage to the player. I don't know if I would trade this for a Bonfire, and like it also gets me around attackers because I don't have to worry about the double X like Bonfire. I can just get around like a Worm Coil if they drop it and I've just about won. Just throw a Fireball in their face, don't have to worry about like life gain or death touch or anything. Curse of Stalked Prey. This is kind of like a fun sideboard card that has no real purpose other than to just entertain myself. Sometimes I put it out or put it in my deck if my opponent has a Curse of Death's Hold, because it can make my Ink Moths a little bit bigger so they don't instantly become negated by getting all my creatures get -1/-1 if they've been hit a couple times. I haven't really used this card since my Boros Tempered Steel deck, but it was fun in there, and I've used it in my Vampires a couple times,